Hey, what's up, guys? Jason here with BounceWave Inflatable Sales. A boring segment of video. Want to talk about the kind of the world and the markets and you know how this year kind of projectedly will wrap up and what we can look for next year. Some positive news that if Trump is making some headwind with China. Why does it matter? It matters, even if it doesn't affect you directly. Again, most places you do business have affiliations, and that predicts cost and fear, right? It stokes fear into the economy. When people are fearful, they don't spend as much money. The biggest thing right now, or has been over the last 5 months, is the trade war with China. Not so much with Indonesia and Guatemala and all those places, because it's such small transitions there of business. The larger portions are always going to be with China, and it looks like with the minerals and there's going to be some movement there that they're going to put that together, and that's going to be massive. That's going to be absolutely huge to kind of run out this year and go into next year. Now, you never know if those deals will dissipate, maybe, but I think the Chinese government and the U.S. government knows that that's not a game really to play on either side of the ball, because it can really be a detriment to both sides. So that's a big thing. That's you'll see that the markets took a big dip. You'll see that the markets are roaring again. That's how quick that talk in a positive manner happens. The other thing too is, if with some of the peace that's happening around the world, which what does that matter to me? It all matters. In business, all this stuff matters because it's fear, right? If there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of going on, people get fearful. They start to hold their money. They start to spend less, and that becomes problematic for rental industries and restaurants and all the things we see in life. The war in Russia as well. I do think before it's said and done, they are going to come to terms. I really do, and that's going to be a huge catalyst as well when that gets done. And I do think before it's said and done, we will see that happen. So not 100% sure on that, but if that happens before the end of the year, and the catalyst going into next year will be insane. So if you're thinking about venturing out there and opening a business, starting a bounce house business, or whatever that business may look like, I think we're on the right track. Again, the market's at all-time high. People are saying potentially AI bubble, but I think a lot of people are missing that by a mile with the whole data centers and what it takes for the U.S. to compete in technology. I don't feel it's a bubble at all. It's going to matter. That's why drones are doing most of our wars. So much is going into that area of technology that this is more of an industrial movement in today's terms. It's like the Industrial Revolution today. So what does that do? That drives markets, that drives incomes. Another thing, the tax cuts, right? So these businesses getting a lot of these tax cuts, medium to upper-ended businesses, that's going to be more profit. Hopefully, if they're smart people, they hire on more people for growth, pay their people more. That's just a big incentive to also boost economy. Housing's still an issue, as we well know, but I think with we did tick up in inflation, so I think the Fed is going to have to lower rates. I think we're going to see a quarter point again here very quickly, and then I think we're going to see another one, if not a half, before the end of the year. Trump's going to get that down to 3%, 2.5, 2 points, somewhere in there. I think that's where he's wanting to be, and I think that's going to end up happening, and you're going to see that trickle down. That also helps markets and borrowing for companies to expand their businesses. What does it mean to us in the rental industry? Everything affects everything, right? The world news affects business, and people really don't understand that, because we get, in our mind, it's just delivering a bounce house or that, and did we make that customer happy? There is that, but there's also, are those people, do they have decent paying jobs where they can afford to rent from us, right? And in our community, does that matter? Well, sure it does, because that's how you get your business, and you get a lot of it where you can move prices up a little bit and people will pay it, or whatever that looks like for your growth, right? So the world matters. So I like to, update people, here and there in a positive form on when things are good, or sometimes when I think they're going to get a little stickier, and the market's going to drag down and there's a lot out there. So be a little more careful with your pricing. Take those distant jobs just to keep the income flowing, to keep your head above water. I'll do those as well when it gets a little bit tougher, but all signs are showing. Most headwinds, not all, but most headwinds are starting to dissipate a little bit to get some clarity. And people are waiting for this huge market crash because it's at all-time highs. but I'm not sure it's going to be there because companies are extremely profitable. They're turning in their reports. SoFi just yesterday, extremely profitable. Intel, who hasn't been profitable in forever, turned a small profit. So there's just so many. Not all your retail companies are still struggling. Some your Decker Outdoors and all those guys are still struggling a little bit, but your tech companies for sure are blowing it out of the water. Palantir and all those guys are doing insane. But even your mid caps are showing, and small caps are showing profits. That means something around the whole world, and definitely in the U.S. and Florida and Georgia and Alabama. It doesn't matter what state you're in. So feel good about that. Feel good about, in my mind, possibly looking, and we'll watch this play out, but I think we're going to see, and we'll know by the end of the week if they come up with some pretty solid trade deals between China and the U.S. Now, as well, there's Canada, there's some fighting there, but that's not going to affect us a whole lot on because we don't do a whole lot there. So there's not a lot of movement there. Yeah, it's going to hurt some of the whiskey companies and kind of that look, maybe a few of the lumber things, stuff like that. That's not a big pull on the economy, really, because there's just not enough trade in the right areas to actually have massive impact. So China's the one we got to watch for, things like China and Japan, those sorts of things that bring in, Vietnams, that bring in a lot of different things to keep small shops moving and small companies moving. So I think all that looks pretty good. It looks pretty clear. Again, we'll have to wait and see how that measures out, but we're going as hard as ever. I mean, I pulled the trigger the other day on some inventory for next year, and it's going to be in the millions, and I'm gonna take a chance because I think the demand's going to be way higher than the supply I'll have. Calculated risk, but the stars kind of line up, and when they line up, I'm gonna pull the trigger and take a chance. Not telling you to do that. I'm telling you, evaluate where you're at. I do think you'll be busier next year than this year, especially if you're in states that are growing, like Florida, Georgia, Alabama. All the southeast states are still flourishing and growing. So kind of process that, take that in, and do your own research. Watch the news and the different things and how these meetings turn out and what Besson has to say, and kind of where all this goes. I watch it pretty closely only because I know it's an indicator of some of the real estate and the welding business and all the other things I have to look after. It matters, especially in the welding side, because you have Florida Foods who spend they'll set a budget at $2 million. Well, if there's a bunch going on with China and we're not sure how to borrow money, if the interest rates are going to stay way up, they'll ease that back. So you have to fight a little bit more to get those smaller jobs to get through. But if taxes are lowered, the trade war kind of subsides some, interest rates lower where they can borrow money cheaper, I know they're going to open that gate up, so I have to prepare for that. So there's a lot of different things that come into play there. So hopefully you guys get something out of stuff like this. I miss it with the best of them, but I try and watch it pretty closely to try and project. You got to have some sort of projection. There can't be nothing. You can't just go day to day and stumble through it and wonder how it's going to happen. You got to see it, whether you think it's going to get a little tougher for 5 or 8 months and you're going to have to cut expenses and do extra or whether you're going to open the doors up a little bit here and see if you can throttle down and really get ahead. Take that money, invest in some passive stuff, which I always think is a good idea. If you can buy a little piece of real estate, buy a little rental property, 150, fixer up on the side, buy some stocks that, when you see those big dips, maybe put 100, 200 here, 200 there every time you get a little spare cash. It's amazing what it does, and that's how all the people do it. Anyhow, hopefully y'all get something out of this. Let's roar through IAPA. Let's finish the year off as strong as we can. But I'm going to tell you, I really think next year is going to be awfully explosive. Prep for it, be prepared for it, and put yourself in the best spot to win. That doesn't mean buy from me, buy from whoever. Don't hold yourself back. We have this uncanny ability as owners sometimes of fear, and when the fear is there, you have to be smart. When this market in Florida, the houses were going $500,000, $600,000, and they were only worth $350,000. Yeah, be fearful. Don't go buy a bunch of houses. It's a bad idea. Don't chase like that. But when you see taxes coming down, interest rates going down, wars subsiding, and trade wars hopefully starting to come together, those are kind of signals of a positive market, of a positive kind of America, if you will, in that drive forward. So hopefully this helps. Doesn't mean I'm exactly right. Do your own homework on that. But let's have a good IAPA, finish up the year strong, go into next year, just throttling it and making as much money as we can. See you guys soon.